All right, Max Elson, it's great to see you in person. Not quite so much in person, but through a phone. But it's still great to see you. And I'd love for you just to tell everyone a little bit of your background, who you are, where you came from.
Thanks, John. Yeah, it's great to see you too. So, what my background in particular, or as it pertains to Demetrius, or both?
Just you. Who's Max
Yeah.
Elson?
So I'm a product of a Midwestern family. My parents were high school sweethearts from Kansas, and they moved to Florida in the early '70s when I was just a little toddler. Really grew up in St. Pete, living the perfect little American dream upbringing. Grew up in a Snell Isle, part of St. Petersburg, and I grew up working in a family business in high school. My father started and owned. My mother was a school teacher. My father started and owned a specialty food and wine market, kind of like a Fresh Market or a Whole Foods or something before its time, specialty grocer. That I worked in that for high school, and then went off to college, and I went to University of Florida. Got my undergraduate degree there, just a liberal arts degree, thinking that I wanted to go back and get involved in and sort of take over this family business, help grow it and things along those lines. So I graduated from UF in '91 and came back with working for my family in St. Pete. We had an opportunity to open a second store in Tampa, Florida. And we did that, of course, my first couple of years. And we ended up opening it in, it would have been like the summer or fall of 1993. And we were on Harbor Island in downtown Tampa. It was our second location. And right when we first opened, the Bucks were just getting ready to go into training camp. And there was this second and third round draft pick that were roommates that lived about a block away from our store that had moved into town. We had been open for about 2 weeks, and I think they moved to town a week later, and in walked John Lynch and Demetrius DuBose. And that's how I met those guys. So that's a little bit about my background, and at least how I met Demo.
What was the name of the store, Max?
Yeah, it was called Fancy's.
Okay, cool. And is it still around?
No, my dad sold it in '99 or 2000. Some people ran it for a number of years later, but it's not around anymore. My dad was probably guilty of being too much of a visionary and ahead of his time. You know, it was really a unique place, but it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot about food.
I'm sure you did. And what was your first impression of John and Demetrius?
Oh, first impression. Gosh, really just nice guys, very interesting guys. I actually met Linda, John's wife, first. And then the two of them came in, I think later on in the same day. And I didn't really know much about them. I didn't recognize them. I just sort of by default figured they might've been athletes. And in Tampa at the time, there was only one pro football team. I wondered if they played for the Bucks, and got to talking to them, and found out, that they had moved, from California, and of course from South Bend and whatnot, and found out what they did. But both great, very engaging, fun, smart, normal guys. Hit it off like that.
What attributes did they have that made you say, oh, these guys might be athletes? What made you think that?
The two of them, just, physical size and presence, young, you just tell, basically, yeah, age, where we were, size,
I get it. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, Demetrius and John is really a big guy for a safety. But Demetrius too. I mean, these guys definitely, they stand out.
Yeah. No question.
So where did your relationship go with them from the first couple encounters at Fancy's, and talk to us a little bit about what happens next with your relationship with them?
Yeah. So we, like I said, I don't think we'll get into this more. I don't think Demo ever met a stranger, you know. So I mean, we just hit it off. I think we're very like-minded people. I think much the same way you and he were friends, and how you and I sort of hit it off in our initial conversations. Just really somebody, Demo in particular, was somebody that was, you just really struck a chord with. You're like, this is my kind of people. There's something unique or special about this person. And it wasn't just that they were an athlete, or that they were different colored skin, or from a different part of the country, or went to a different school. There was something unique about him individually, you know, just talking to him, his depth of character, right out of the gate. You know, we would have very deep, interesting, but don't get me wrong, we were 23, 24 years old. They were fun conversations, right? I mean, we were lighthearted and yucked it up and had a great time right at the get-go. You know, we started hanging out. We, you know, go catch beers here and there, and you know, I'd come by the store a lot. We'd talk. Conversations would slowly but surely get more interesting and more frequent, and started spending more time together. And as I'd mentioned, he and John were roommates, because they were, although they went to Stanford and Notre Dame, you know, they had become friends through their playing days against one another. And then when they were drafted by the Bucks, you know, in the second and third round, they were, you know, good friends. John had just gotten engaged to Linda, and they were kind of going the more traditional route. And so John and Linda didn't live together. She moved out to Tampa, also lived in the same apartment complex, but had her own place. And then John and Demo had their place. So we become fast friends throughout that fall, spending a lot of time together. We actually did some catering for the team on the Saturdays before games and stuff like that. We had some fun with that. That was one of the first things that Demo and I did that was really different. Rookies were in charge of serving breakfast on the Saturday meetings. So when he was up, you know, he had to step to the plate. So he hired our family business. We came in, and, you know, he didn't just bring donuts and coffee, right? You know, he had to take it to the next level, and we took it to the next level. You know, it was cool. So anyways, we had a great time together that fall. And then John and Linda got married. And so here's Demo, this 22, 23-year-old guy, which, as you know, he wants to just be one of the fellas in a lot of ways, you know? So here he is. Yeah, he's a 32nd overall draft pick in the NFL, captain of Notre Dame's football team, you know, playing for the Bucks, but he's also a 22, 23-year-old guy that wants a roommate and wants a buddy. He didn't want to go live in a house, you know, out on the other side of town in the burbs, you know, like the players that were 6 or 8 years older than him that had families. He wanted a roomie. So boom, he said, go find us a place. So
nice.
I ended up finding these cool townhomes that were right on Bayshore Boulevard, and behind this old famous Tampa house called the Bigelow Helms Mansion on the corner of Gandy and Bayshore Boulevard. And they just opened these nice townhomes right behind them, and they were rentals, they were apartments. So I ended up signing us up, and bam, he moved in, and so that's how we kind of started our relationship, from like summer of 93 till, say, the spring of 94. And we lived together for 1.5 years or 2 years.
Nice. So you talked a little bit earlier, Max, about some of the conversations you'd have and things you discussed. What, if you look back on your time with Demo, is there a particular conversation that sticks out in your mind?
Regarding what subject, John?
Well, let's just say this. I know there was a time from our previous discussion where you were at a crossroads about what you wanted to do with your life, right? And that's what sticks out to me. We've talked about your relationship with Demetrius. So if you maybe touch on the type of impact he had on you, as far as encouraging, or however you want to describe it. But I'm talking specifically about your decision to go to grad school.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the way that conversation impacted me, it took me a little bit of time to get to get there with him, to have the kind of respect and depth of understanding of who he was in order to make some of the decisions that I made. But that all starts from maybe kind of the first day that I met him. You know, he was the kind of guy that, like, if you were out at a bar or a birthday party or something, and if you have any kind of extroverted tendencies in your body, he was the kind of person you wanted to go talk to. You had to get across the room and figure out, who is this guy, man? What's his deal? You know? So that's how we started becoming friends. And then that comes with additional layers. You know, he wasn't just the fun party guy. There was a lot of depth there. There's a lot of interesting things there. He was an incredibly passionate person. And again, so that stuff comes out at the surface as just fun life of the party. But as you dig deeper, you got to know that his depth of character was extraordinary, second to none. I mean, I can count on my hand, on my fingers on my hand, the type of people that had the kind of depth of character and soul searching that he did. And I would get to know that over time, over the course of a year or two. And I had an unbelievable level of respect for him. And, you know, the drive that he had, the passion that he had for greatness. We can come back and touch on all of those throughout our conversation. But, you know, I'll never forget when I had decided, I had been working for the family business for about 3 or 4 years. I had known Demo for about a year and a half, 2 years. And I had decided that I really, for a variety of reasons, was missing some things in what I wanted to do professionally and with my life. I didn't have the passion for that business. I had some unrealized, some unfinished parts of my education. I didn't take any business classes in college. I just thought I was going to go work for the family. I had some holes in my education. I wasn't passionate about wanting to stay in that family business. So I decided I wanted to go to get my MBA. I wanted to go to grad school. And I came across this specialized MBA that was offered through the Cornell Hotel School. And the School of Hotel Administration, the hotel school at Cornell, is, you know, one of the most highly regarded, if not the most prestigious hotel school in the country or world even. And they had, like I said, this specialized MBA program. And my grades weren't such that, you know, I was going to get into Harvard or Stanford or, you know, one of these top 10 traditional MBA programs. But because of my background in hospitality, I thought, you know, I might have a shot at getting into Cornell and doing my MBA there, which I thought was very cool. Great program, great school, Ivy League, all those things. So I started sharing this with Demetrius that, hey, you know, man, I need to talk to you. I don't know how to broach this with my family. I kind of want to leave the family business. I'm really thinking I want to go to grad school, and I really want to go to Cornell. I really have done some research, and I want to try to get into business school at Cornell. And Demo just stopped me right there, and he said, okay, well, we'll come back to your family and your dad, but you want to go to Cornell. That's your passion. I said, yeah, absolutely. He said, okay, then that's the only school you're going to apply to. I thought that, after I was dumbfounded for a second, I thought that's an interesting response. But, you know, if you really know Demo, if you know Demetrius the way he is, that response makes total sense. There was no judgment. He saw my passion. He saw my intention. And he set the expectation, which is, we're going to hit the goal and that's it. We're not going to accept anything less, you know? So that's the only school you're going to apply to. And somehow, John, I was crazy enough to believe him. I was crazy enough to buy in. And I'm not sure if my parents to this day know this, but I didn't apply to another graduate school. And, you know, I checked every box, everything you needed to do to make the team, right? You know, to get accepted. And, you know, I went up there for my interview. I did everything. I got in. And I'll never forget opening that letter of acceptance to Cornell. And I called him up, and I mean, we cried like babies on the phone. And then we laughed and we said, we're going to celebrate tonight, you know? And I mean, I'll never forgive the joy in his face. It was like he saw his, you know, kid get accepted to college or graduate from high school or something. I mean, I was 2 years older than him, but that was the kind of passion he had for me and that goal. It was like we achieved it together. And that's how Demo was, you know. If you were in his camp, if you were in his world, everything you did was together. He was so inclusive of people in his world, you know, and that, to me, that's the ultimate story that, you know, I still can't believe I did it, you know, like, why would you invest all of that time and like not even have a backup plan? But it worked out. He was right.
It's beautiful. And it is consistent with the story so many other people have said about Demetrius. And what about like off the field? You know, what did you guys do for fun? Describe what a typical day and night when he didn't have football and you didn't have work. What would you guys be? What would you do?
You know, again, it varied. You know, everybody that knows that knew him out in San Diego, you know, you'd see pieces of him in Tampa. You know, he loved, you know, the Land Rover Defender with the top down and the music blaring, and you know, it was Tribe Called Quest one day and Pearl Jam or Nirvana the next, and you know, I mean, he was all over the board. You know, it would totally depend. He loved the finer things in life. We'd go out to a nice meal, but you know, we loved to go to a beach bar or Fort Greene Fields and have a Guinness. I mean, we did a little bit of everything together. But one of the other really cool stories, you know, talking about Demo and some of the fun. I mean, you talk about something that's off the wall. So here's my father. I worked, as I mentioned, in this family business. My dad was, I think, about exactly my age at the time. I think he's 52 years old. And so he split his time between our store in St. Petersburg and our store in Tampa. And my dad, for his fun and passion and to blow off steam, he bought himself a Harley Davidson. He had a 1993 FLSTN. It was a badass bike. You know, it was a cool kind of fat boy type bike, old nostalgia, throwback looking bike. And it was cool. He had it all macked out, bells and whistles. And this was like in the heyday of Harley's comeback time, right? It was cool to have a Harley, you know. My dad was a cool guy, and he really liked that bike. And Demo and my dad had a real friendship. Again, not surprising at all. You know, he didn't know a stranger. You know, my father and I were very similar. Demo and I hit it off. So my father and he hit it off, and they had a friendship immediately, much like he and I did, and not a friendship like the father of his friend, but they had their own friendship, you know, just like that. So he'd known my dad for about 6 months. It's probably the first off season. And he had seen my dad on this Harley. He saw the joy of that Harley on my dad. And all of a sudden we're sitting there in the store one afternoon, and around the corner, you hear that unmistakable sound of a Harley Davidson, potato, 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 rumbling into the parking lot. We look up, and here's Demetrius DuBose on this brand new red fat boy Harley Davidson.
Yeah. He
didn't look particularly confident on the bike, but he did look cool. I'll give him that. Okay. So Demo gets in. We're like, dude, what the hell are you doing? What's going on? He gets out, and he's got, you know how you would always, you know, right, encompassing, right? So his arms are always out like this, right? Like he's welcoming, right? Sign of hospitality. Bro, to my dad, look, I did this because of you. And he said that to my father, you know, like he's like, I saw your passion. He's like, I had to do this. I had to have one. So he went out and bought his Harley Davidson from Jim's Harley Davidson over in St. Pete because my dad, he saw the passion. He liked my dad. He thought it was cool. He wanted to ride a Harley. And so he ended up buying a Harley because of my dad, and they would ride around together, you know? So, I mean, you want to talk about the odd couple, right? They'd be going down St. Pete Beach, right? Here's this 6'4", 245-pound black guy, you know, NFL linebacker, 23, 24 years old. This, you know, 52-year-old middle-aged, you know, guy with the salt and pepper beard, about 40 pounds overweight, and the two of them are, are going down bar hopping, the beaches of St. Petersburg Beach together. And mind you, if you notice, I'm not in these stories because, like I said, they had their own thing going, but it was a blast to watch. Again, it's just it's another example of the kind of person he was, didn't know a stranger.
Yeah. And he again, it's just consistent with everything I've heard from everyone. He, across all racial lines, age differences, gender, sexual preference, political views, it didn't matter. He treated it was a sight to behold, because people like that are rare. And when you come across one, they're unforgettable. They stay with you forever. And hopefully, like for me, just hearing the stories, yeah, I'm hoping I'm a bit like that, and that's, and you take something, from these people that are no longer here physically, and that's how they're still here, because of you incorporate their beliefs and their behaviors and their hearts into how you behave, into how you treat other people.
You're 100% right. I mean, I think that there are parts of me that were like that. And if anybody has those tendencies in their personality, which are great tendencies, to love all, to be encompassing, to see the wonderfulness in everything, to want to lift everybody up. If you have those tendencies at all, he put the spotlight on them. You know what I mean? He accentuated it in you, and that, that's what he did to me. He still does it for me, John. I'd be lying if I said I think about him every day. I don't. It's been 22 years next week, but I think about him all the time. I miss him all the time.
I'm sorry. I am. I know how close you were. And, I was with Michael Husted last week, and he, told me you were the one that broke the news to him, and that he'll never forget you, and how destroyed you were when you're trying to tell him what happened. And it was like you were both destroyed through the phone, and he said that's something that he'll never forget. Just the sounds that were coming out of both of your voices. So I want to.
Yeah, you don't forget that. I was just a couple weeks from getting married, and my dad called me, and that night I remember where was I? I was up in New York, I was finishing up grad school. My dad called me, and I remember calling Michael, and I was devastated. He was the first real true friend of mine that I had die, and then to have everything unfold, to find out the manner in which he died, and knowing just everything that was going on in his life, the kind of person he was, some of the dark areas he had been into, and what he was working on trying to get through, and just tragedies on so many levels, that were really hard to wrap your arms around, and are still very hard to wrap your arms around. But
well, Max, what about, let's backtrack a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
And I think about kind of your, like, how did you, Demetrius went off, signed with the Jets, he left Tampa. You're in New York at this, at some point. But when were the last time, like, where did your relationship go, like, towards the end of his Buccaneers career, and then through, getting released by the Jets, and then his time in San Diego? Could you describe, your relationship with Demo at that point, and what you knew about kind of some of the stuff he was going through?
Yeah, there's a lot of facets to that. There was a dark period for Demo. When I say dark, I mean probably literally and figuratively. Like, I think it was dark for him, in that he was kind of struggling with failure, for the perceived failure, for the first time in his life, i.e., not making it in the NFL, and how to deal with that, and whatever was going on with him in terms of depression, processing all of that. And then, kind of physically went dark with me because I didn't hear from him as much. You know, I spent a lot of time trying to track him down, you know, what's going on, because I loved him and I worried about him. And it was unlike him to just drop off the level of communication that he did, you know. You know, and I knew he was struggling. I knew, I didn't know much about it at the time, but I knew he was depressed. I knew that there was more than just drinking going on in his world to deal with it. And I didn't know what or to what extent, but I knew that drugs were playing a part, you know, in his life. And I, like nearly every other friend I've had who's gone through a dark period in their life or dabbled with drugs, you know, I always assumed that he would pull out of that phase of his life and didn't really give a whole lot of thought to it in terms of being worried for him for his life or anything along those lines. But as we know, that opportunity didn't present itself in the future because it was cut short for other reasons.
Yeah. And do you remember the last time you saw him?
I was thinking about that, knowing that this conversation was coming up, and I went and saw him. I went out and visited him at his townhome in Del Mar. And I believe it was the Christmas of '97, which would have been, it was definitely the Christmas of '97 because it was after he was cut by the Jets. And that was this, I was going through the timeline, and that was the summer of '97 that had happened. So it was the Christmas of '97. Yes. I spent a week with him.
And tell us about that. What was that demo like?
That demo was still in a pretty good place. You know, he was very happy to me on the surface, you know, active. We did a lot of fun things. You know, I felt though like he understandably probably was lacking a little bit of direction. You know, he didn't necessarily know what exactly he was going to be going to do. You know, he was loving the beach vibe and playing volleyball. He was, you know, there was talk, you know, he had fallen in love with snow skiing. There was talk of trying to do the ski patrol thing. You know, he was a little bit lost, I think. I felt like maybe too, he was hiding drug use from me at that time, John, when I was out visiting him.
Well, what makes you say that?
Just a couple things stood out at me. It was just me staying at his house, and like he went and left, you know, like 12:30. Hey, I'm going to go out for a little bit, you know, and just kind of went and disappeared for, you know, 30, 45 minutes and came back, and just, it was just very unlike him, you know, that just made me, and this is after, you know, some friends of his and I were having some conversations. How's he doing? What's going on? You know, well, you know, I hear he's doing this. I hear he's doing that. He's, you know, I don't see him as much. And, you know, so we knew that he had been not his normal self from, say, his Buccaneers. And I didn't know him in his Notre Dame days, but, you know, in years prior. And so I was just probably a little bit on edge at that time. And, you know, I didn't say anything. This is more like looking back, really. Just didn't seem like him. But that was the last time I saw him. You know, I wanted him to be in my wedding, but I didn't ask him to be in it, John, because it was in '99 and I couldn't reach him. You know, he had gone kind of, you know, I was concerned. He had gotten kind of sporadic. You know, I wasn't sure if he had said if he'd make it, if he was going to be there. You know, it had really become difficult to maintain that same level of closeness for me. Now, maybe that wasn't the case at all for people that were in his day-to-day world in San Diego, but for me, that was in that world from like '93 to '96. it was a very different experience for me. I really felt out of touch.
It must have been hard on you too, Max.
Oh, it's horrible. It was horrible. Yeah.
And so let's just go to July 24th now, 1999, and describe your feelings, or how, your dad called you, and what is your immediate reaction to what happened?
Oh, that's so hard to describe. It's visceral for me. I hadn't really, I don't think I'd ever lost anybody, a loved one, at that point in my life. I knew a couple of ancillary people, but I never really knew anybody, certainly nobody I was close to, who had died, period. And I'm 29 years old at the time. So it's a blessing for me, right? But that was tough, and it took me a long time just to wrap my arms around it. And then immediately I went into the guilt, like, I knew he was struggling. What happened? How in the world did this happen? How could I have not have helped him? And then I started digging in, like, wait a second, shot this many times. I don't care what was going on. He didn't deserve that. So I'm struggling with, could I have helped my friend more? Was my friend needing me more? Why in the world did somebody do this to him? What a tragic loss of life. I struggled with so many things, regarding that. There was a multitude of things. There wasn't one thing. It wasn't like just one cause and effect. There was multiple questions and very few answers.
Yeah. Well, we have more answers now. Time has passed, and we're able to look at these things and put them in historical context. And, where does Demetrius's story fit in today's world?
Well, I think about that a lot. I'm not sure there is a simple. I try to think some of the obvious ones. What would Demetrius say if he was living today? What would he say about what happened? What would he say about the attention that some people that have been involved in police shootings, what would he say about that? What would he say about his own? He was an interesting person. He had an unimaginable depth to him to be able to analyze situations. So I think about what he would do, what he would say. And I think that he'd think it's tragic to see his life swept under the rug. It's so hard to describe though, John. He wouldn't want the limelight, right?
Right.
He wouldn't want the limelight, but I don't care who you say. It's tragic to see no attention paid to the magnitude of his life, in this cause.
Absolutely. So Max, this, you're familiar with this format. This is the point where I ask you to say your goodbye to Demo, to say what you didn't get a chance to say while he was here on Earth.
Well, I would say, Demo, you were effective in touching the lives of so many people. You touched mine to the levels and depths that you can't imagine. To this day, my life and my son's life, everything I've enjoyed, everything that I am, everything that I have, is riddled, with your presence, and your fingerprints are throughout my life and the body of it. And I thank you for that. And I'm sorry that I didn't do more to help you to the extent that I could, keep you out of a dark place and away from trouble. We deserve to learn of your life, not in your absence, but through your presence. And unfortunately, we're not going to get that opportunity. And I apologize to you for that. I don't know, John, I guess I'd say something like that.
Well, I'm sure wherever he is, he knows that and feels it. I mean, from the stories you told me, you had a great effect on his life. And, it's hard to put his story into context, yet at the same time, it's kind of obvious too, right? In some ways, there's paradoxical nature to the way Demetrius thought about the world and how his story fits too, because he wouldn't want the limelight. And he was really evolved and a very evolved thinker. So I'm not even sure that he'd want people, like his idea of justice would be different than a lot of other people's idea of justice.
There's no question. That's kind of my point. There's no question that it would be.
Yeah.
So there wouldn't be he would not be the type to point the blame at one or two people. He would be the type to say, how do we fix this from happening to anybody again? And there's a big difference there. There's a big difference there in what you're seeing in a lot of these movements or causes or uprisings or media focus, frankly, in my opinion. He would want to address the problem, and not not just the ancillary noise.
And that's a big reason why I think his story is so important, because what an incredible human being, right? And again, human, so struggled, went to dark places, just like I did in my 20s, 30s, whatever, name it now.
I did it in my 40s.
It's a constant struggle and a constant battle. And we're fragile. I mean, it could be taken away in a second in a crazy, unexpected way. But I know we got to wrap up, and I also want to give you this chance to just speak from your heart like you have and say anything you want to say.
Oh man. We need more people like Demo in our lives. I've got a handful of people, in my life that are like him. I mean, he was such a unique character, such a unique person. We need to keep his memory going, and the best way to keep his memory going is through efforts of yours and like yourself, and to really try to find a way to truly make some changes and remedy the problems that escaped him, whether that's law enforcement overstepping their boundaries of force, whether it's treating depression, substance abuse, who knows? Did he have CT brain trauma issues? With that he definitely had a change in his personality the last couple of years that I knew him. We don't know, but we deserve to never lose a human being early to those issues. And we especially don't ever deserve to lose somebody like Demetrius DuBose early.
Right on, Max. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for being with us today. It was great seeing you.
All right, buddy.
All right, deep breaths, my man.
All right, man.